What's up, everybody? Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. This evening, I am joined with Austin Pfenninger, ex-Miami Hurricane wide receiver, and he is an NFL agent right now. Austin, please introduce yourself to all the viewers listening right now.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Paul. Happy to be on here. 2017 graduate of the University of Miami for undergrad, and then got a master's there as well this past December. Walked on the football team, ended up becoming a letterman there, receiver, played under Coach Golden, and then my senior year was with Coach Richt. Always had a love for the U since I was 7 years old, and that's where I always wanted to go. And ended up becoming an agent in 2018, was the youngest registered football agent in the country at the time. Now I'm the youngest dual NFL and MLB agent currently at 25. So, yeah, good start so far and happy to be on here.
Yeah, man. Thank you for joining us, Austin. Man, tell us about your story. How did you become a Miami Hurricanes fan? I know you're from the state of Indiana. When I think of Indiana, I just think of Indiana Hoosiers, Bobby Knight. How did you cross paths with the University of Miami?
Yeah, both my parents were Hoosiers, actually. So, they kind of pressured me a little bit to go there. And most of my friends from high school went. But, in first grade when I was in first grade, that was the 2001 championship team. And so when I was young, that was the first year I played football as well. And so the first couple of years when I got into football, started paying attention, that was kind of the height of the early 2000s teams. And they were top of the world. And, I jumped on the bandwagon from day one, and it's kind of been all downhill since. So some disappointing years, but no, I've stuck with them ever since then. My room back home in Indy's painted green and orange.
Nice.
I just knew from an early age, I wanted to end up down here. I love the way they played. I loved seeing the palm trees in the back of the Orange Bowl, and just the colors and everything attracted me. And again, I've been a fan ever since, and wanted to make it happen, and ended up working out.
Yeah, absolutely, Austin. And can you touch up on your story on joining the Miami Hurricanes team? Because I know your first year of college, you weren't enrolled at Miami. You were enrolled in another school, correct? Yeah,
correct.
Tell me about that journey.
Yeah, so it's pretty interesting. I went to a really big high school on the north side of Indianapolis, Carmel, 5,000 kids in our school. My junior year, we finished 4th in the country on Max Preps and 8th on USA Today. I was one of just a few guys who lettered all 3 years. You got to play the freshman team, and then you can move up after that. So I played a lot, but we were in a triple option offense, and so I was mostly a glorified blocker, unfortunately, even though I was in a lot of games and against a lot of big teams in our conference. And most of my recruiting actually came from 7-on-7 in camps. I would go and dominate at a lot of the combines and camps around. My parents drove me to a bunch of college camps, and I did the 7-on-7 circuit, and they'd film me at a lot of those, and I'd cut up my own film and really market myself, because our coaching staff, didn't really assist with that there at the time. So, it's kind of me doing it all. I had a lot of FCS interest, some big schools also, Indiana, I heard from quite a bit. Unfortunately, I wasn't in an offense that really catered to a slot receiver. So that was tough for me. Ended up getting a couple FCS and D2 offers, though, along the way. Again, I always knew that I wanted to try to go to Miami if possible. Ended up applying to the school just on my own for the sake of it, since it was always my favorite. I did was like the early action or early decision. So I thought that would give me, a better shot of getting into the university. And, I had a 3.6 GPA and a pretty good ACT and SAT scores. And ended up getting in touch with the staff, sent my film in. They liked it enough and brought me down on a visit and offered me a preferred walk-on spot. And, I was all set to enroll. And by the time they went to flag my application as an athlete, the university had already denied me or rejected, right around the same time. And it ended up being too late, since I did the early action, and they weren't able to kind of retroactively get me in. And I would have only needed like a 3.0 GPA if they would have done it in time, and if I would have waited to apply later on. So by trying to show the initiative, I ended up kind of screwing myself out over that first year. And, like I said, I had some D2 and FCS offers, and, I was contemplating what did I want my long-term, path to look like. Miami told me if I wanted to try to transfer after a year, they'd make sure to support my application from the very beginning, and it wouldn't happen again. At that point, I decided that's what I still wanted to pursue. I didn't want to look back, having that opportunity right there and not taking it and always regretting it. So I ended up choosing a D3 school called Hanover, which is in southern Indiana, because they pass the ball a lot. And so it was good for me to get some more film. And I knew I would be able to start from day one versus, if I went to one of the other little bit larger schools that offered and redshirting potentially, and, Miami might not have an interest again, that second go around. So that's why I chose there. I ended up starting my whole freshman year. I had a lot of catches, did a lot on the field, but again, I always wanted to go to Miami. Hanover was a smaller school than my high school. This wasn't a great fit after being there. I liked it originally, and then it kind of wore off quickly. So long story short, ended up going through the application process again, and it worked out, and was able to live out my dream.
Very cool. And Austin, tell us about the adjustment process coming from Hanover College, Division III school, and facing some of the best athletes in college football.
Yeah, it was tough. Our high school did a great job of, I think, preparing for college life, both academically and athletically. It was a really tough school. Again, like I said, 5,000 kids, so you have to do really well, if you want to advance in whatever path you choose. Going there football-wise was almost like a step down or kind of laterally. Just all the top teams in Indiana are in one conference, which, the MIC. So we all played top, D1 talent every single week. So I quickly transitioned at the D3 level, but then jumping up to the D1 level, it was tough. And I remember after my first practice, I called my dad and said, "Hey, I don't know if this was the right decision." 5'7" white kid from suburban Indianapolis, and you have some of these guys. Like I remember Quan Muhammad was one of the first guys I saw when I walked in the locker room, and like 6'5", 250 plus, just specimen. And you have a guy like Jamal Carter who doesn't have an ounce of fat on him, just looks like a bodybuilder at 215-pound safety coming down to take your head off. And so it was tough. I think the size and speed, not necessarily, skill too, but I got everywhere based off of my brain and my skill set, not my size or athleticism. I was always very quick. So I was still one of the quicker guys at Miami. I was either second or third, pound for pound weightlifting my whole time at Miami, as well as high school. So I took the weight room really seriously because, not being, I was probably a 4'6" guy on my best day, but I had a really good shuttle time. So I was quicker than fast. So I had to, have some strength in me so I wouldn't get pushed around. And so it's definitely an adjustment, but, you learned what worked on the field, what didn't, just learning how to watch film at that level, breaking down tendencies that really helped push me along further in my career. Once I really understood the mental aspect a lot more of the game, and everything slowed down from there.
Yeah, absolutely. And Austin, that first year at Miami, was there a certain coach, certain player that really mentored you that you looked up to when you were going through practices?
That's actually a tough question because I think that's part of the reason why we didn't have as much success, especially at the end of the tenure. I think a lot of the older guys didn't give much, time of day to the younger guys when they came in. So at least player-wise, I didn't really have a mentor. I was kind of on my own. I hung out with the younger guys as well, but, it was kind of a division in the locker room. Not that the older guys were bad or anything, and a lot of good guys, but I just don't think a lot of them took the younger classes under their wing and kind of showed them the ropes or the standards. As far as coaching goes, Andrew Swayze, treated me really well and early on because I, again, didn't look the part when I got there. And, so I think he, it stood up for me sometimes when I needed it at first. And, like anything, you just kind of had to earn your stripes there and earn respect, and eventually ended up doing that. And, say what you want about Coach D'Onofrio. He was really good to me as well. And being on scout team, I went against his guys every day. So he was a guy who was, screamed at a lot of people, but not me. So, he treated me with a lot of respect, which I appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. Austin, man, speaking of that, was it the 2014 season that you were a part of? There were 7 players drafted on that team. I think that was like one of the most in the nation. I think we had leveled out the same as Alabama drafted that year. I could be wrong, but that's a lot.
I think so.
There's a lot of good players. Duke Johnson, Philip Dorsett, for example. I think Eric Flowers as well.
Yeah, you went first round, and it was a lot, and that made that season even more puzzling after the fact. After the draft happened, and I think all 11 offensive starters ended up getting drafted or played in the NFL, and had a lot on defense too from that team. And you said Eric and Philip were first round picks that year. Had a lot of other talented guys, and that's kind of when the rumbling started, where you thought Coach Golden might get let go. And, I had a lot of respect for him and appreciate the opportunity that he gave me, to live out my dream. And I just think time kind of ran its course at that point, and a lot of guys weren't bought into the program, and we're just kind of doing their own thing once it got to that level. But yeah, we had a lot of talent. I think just maybe stubborn philosophies in the system is kind of what ended up hurting us overall, and just not willing to adapt to the personnel we had down here. I think if Coach Golden got another shot at a Big Ten or a MAC school, I think his system would do really well up there. Same with D'Onofrio potentially, but I just don't think it was a right fit. With the personality and the coaching philosophy that they utilize.
Yeah, no, and another thing too, we don't see a lot of true freshmen. I mean, we see specific cases with Clemson, Alabama, but taking over and just having outstanding seasons, winning national titles. Brad Kaya came in as a true freshman. Was he dominating the practices in the spring going into that season? Because I remember there were rumblings all over. Maybe it was just through media outlets saying, Ryan Williams could have gotten the job. Maybe Jake Heaps was a little bit more prepared, but you were there in practice. Was Brad Kaya ready to go?
I think he was ready to go, at least from a physical standpoint. Obviously, his strength was his mind as well. He really understood the game a lot. He had a really good arm. Brad wasn't the rah-rah type of leader. I think he was a good leader on our team, and but that's just a tough job for a freshman, especially when you're more of a quiet guy. I thought Ryan did really well and looked well. I can't remember the entire scenario with what happened. There are rumors that he was ready to go or partially cleared by some people, but not others. And, I don't want to put out false information because, it's quite a while ago. I can't remember the story, but, I thought if Ryan ended up getting the job, that we would have been done well with him too. And I think just him being I think he was a 5th-year guy at that point, might have benefited in some instances, but I think Brad did a great job. All things considered, coming in as a true freshman like that. And I think Jake was a good leader, but I think just as far as the skill set goes, Brad was pretty clear ahead from the get-go, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And Austin, man, talk to us about that transition from Al Golden going to Mark Richt that you were a part of. Can you just highlight maybe some differences the Al Golden staff did differently or the Mark Richt staff did differently?
Yeah, it's always a tough time when a coach leaves or gets fired and you have to make that transition. And, part of it was good for me, being on a clean slate and getting to show what I can do to a new staff. That offseason was definitely the toughest few months of my life. And because they were trying to weed players out, by using the weight room basically. And I don't want to say punishing guys, but, if you weren't doing everything to a T, you were, doing 100 up downs in a row, any disciplinary issues, you're up at 5 a.m. till he throwing up basically.
Yeah.
And just made it as hard as possible on guys and really try to break you. And, a lot of scholarship guys ended up leaving due to that. So it was tough. I thought about quitting several times. Just, your mind can take a lot more than, or your body can take a lot more than your mind can a lot of times. And it's just kind of pushing through that mental hurdle. But I think it was necessary. I think, again, I liked Coach Golden. He was good to me. I think he was a good guy. I think he had a really good eye for talent recruiting.
Yeah,
I think he recruited well. And
yeah,
like you said, with how many guys were drafted, like off that 2014 team, I think it was just getting the most out of that talent, using it the right way. I think both coaches, could have improved on that as well. But what I really liked about Coach Richt was he really got to know everybody on a personal level, whether you were, very bottom of the totem pole or, the starting quarterback. I think everyone was treated the same under those coaches. And again, if you could play, you could play. If you couldn't, you couldn't. And so that's what I really appreciated. We did a lot more just, being mostly on the scout team. They really implemented, the 3s and 4s into the practices more, in 1-on-1, 7-on-7s. So we're getting better. And that's when my game really grew a lot. So then we're able to give a better look when it comes to those scout periods in practice, when you have the 30 minutes or so, when, you're showing the other team, your opponent's offense. And then I ended up getting a lot of reps with the 2s when I was, going into my senior year. And because I, was finally getting a shot to show what I could do and ended up really improving my game. So, and we weren't really getting those opportunities under Coach Golden. It was more so, this is kind of where you're at and this is going to be your role going forward. There wasn't much room for, change or opportunity, if you could say that. So that'd be the main difference. I really really appreciate both coaches though and the opportunities that they gave me.
Yeah, Austin, when you said tough practices, I just thought of mat drills automatically, how much the players were just, they hated it. I mean, what was that like? I mean, what's kind of like, put me in the scenario of a player entering a mat drill.
Yeah, I mean, one, had to show up at the facility at I want to say 5 a.m. So it's just, you're kind of dead tired anyway and not thinking straight. So that's, the initial part that's tough. You're broken into groups by positions, and then there's a bunch of different stations you would have. The biggest thing with that is, every rep had to be perfect. If you had a little misstep or anything, you'd do it over. And some guys are doing the same ladder drill or weaving or whatever, 4 or 5 times in a row, and you're gassed at that point. And, it gets the term mat drills because one of the stations is on the wrestling mat, and, you jump up and you're chopping with 3 or 5 guys next to you and going side to side and doing rolls and things like that. And it's wet with sweat. And so you're slipping all over the place. And, if you don't finish through the line or if you, mess up at all, again, your whole group goes back. And so it's just exhausting. I mean, I don't know how long it actually lasted for, but it was like twice a week, on top of all the lifts and runs we had to do and all. But it was just really about discipline and, mental toughness and focus. And it was just really got the most out of guys, I think, in that aspect.
Hey, Austin, that 2016 season under Mark Richt, I believe it was his first year at Miami. People were kind of curious what the offense was going to be like. People said it was going to be similar to what he ran with Charlie Ward at Florida State. It's been a while since he hadn't called plays. I spoke with Steve Kim about this on the previous interview. Listen, the what happened the last 4 games after we lost to Notre Dame, where the offense just completely changed.
Yeah, that's a tough part of that season. And, it was a really fun season for me. Just, I got a lot more opportunities. I ended up getting on the field a little bit. I ended up getting a letter. So, personally, it was fun. We were winning games, but again, we left some on the table that, we shouldn't have lost, and it kind of hurts looking back at. We thought we were probably kind of getting that, 90s Florida State type offense. And, I don't know if it was because we just didn't have a mobile quarterback or what the reasoning for, the initial offense at the beginning of the year. But, a lot of us thought Brad was going to be a Heisman candidate going into that year based off of how he looked in practice every day in the spring and fall camp. And, after that Notre Dame game, when we came back, and that's when we really opened kind of a spread offense and came back once we were down. And I think we showed that that's what we needed to do to, kind of stay alive or compete. And then, those last 4 games or, whatever it was, I think we were the best offense in the country at that point, or, up there, and we could score on anyone. And, we weren't using David Njoku up the seams enough.
Yeah,
Braxton wasn't playing, and people knew internally for years how good he was. And he was an afterthought. The fan base thought nothing of him. And, on the inside, we all knew he was an NFL talent. I don't think we were using counters enough, not enough runs to the outside and kind of stretching it, and just too much up the middle. So, I really like Coach Richt a lot and have a lot of respect for him. I just think that, if either A, he would have kind of started with that offense the whole time, or B, brought someone else in to consult or call the plays, I think we could have had, a lot more success. I don't know if at that point we would have been able to compete with Clemson still, but I think we could have potentially ran the table in the regular season up to that point. That's kind of how it ended, and we ended up ending on a high note, won our first bowl game in like over 10 years.
That was a great win against West Virginia.
Yeah, that was a great time, and showed what the offense could have done. So, I wish things were different that whole season, but it was still, I think left the program in a better spot than when I came in.
Oh, 100%. No, Brad Kai and Mark Richt, where the program was before under previous coaches, it's night and day.
Right.
With the indoor practice facility. Austin, I want to pick your brain just in a coach's standpoint. This is a good question. Why do you think coaches, when they come to Miami, they fairly think, let's play slow? With all the athletes we have in South Florida, maybe we're not seeing the most electrifying offense. D'Onofrio, according to Malik Rozier, said he just had the players thinking too much. He was very highly intelligent, but just thinking too much. Do you think that's just the philosophy they stand by and they don't want to adapt?
I think so. I think a lot of coaches that you see in the football world are pretty stubborn guys for the most part.
Okay.
I've had some great coaches. I've had some really awful coaches throughout my career. And, I think the most successful ones are the ones that really cater to their personnel and aren't stuck with one school of thought or one, playbook, but always adapting year to year based off of what they have and getting the most out of that. So, again, I think a lot of coaches come and think that they can mold the type of personality or type of athlete down here to their system. And I think the most successful companies or coaches or what have you, adapt to what they have to work with and, put people, find out what they do well and then highlight those instead of forcing them into something that you think maybe they can do, but they're unproven or you're unsure of. So I'm really excited that Coach Lashley's come in and, seeing what he did at SMU. I think he's kind of awoken a sleeping giant here. And, we have the best athletes in the country down in South Florida. And now it's, finally kind of uncaging them and showing what they can do.
Oh, yeah. No, we're all excited. Royals Award finalist, putting up 41 points a game at SMU. What he did with Shane Buechele, Texas basically rejected him as a quarterback, saying, hey, we're parting ways with you, takes him in and literally changes his college career. Were you in shock that Manny Diaz got the job? Because, his resume is very young. He's never been a head coach before. This is Miami. This is a 5-time national champion. He was going to go to Temple. Were you surprised he got the job when he was named?
So kind of from the get-go when he came in, me and a lot of other people kind of, I think, recognized that he was going to be a head coach someday, and he had those qualities and that I thought he'd make a good head coach. And, I wasn't surprised that Temple plucked him up, when they did, and was very happy for him. I like Manny a lot. And so I wasn't shocked that Miami got him. I thought they might have gotten someone more seasoned. I don't think it was the wrong choice. But I think I was maybe a little bit surprised just he had just the timing of everything because he had just left and then got brought back. What was it, like within the next week or two? So I think that was the more shocking part, but he's a Miami guy. took an awful defense into one of the best in the country within a year. The thing I really, really like about Coach Diaz is every single year he's been at Miami, he's adapted in some way. Whether it's his philosophy, changing to use the strike or getting rid of the offensive staff, basically kind of 2 years in a row. When things aren't working or he sees that he needs to make a change, he'll make a change. I don't think his ego is too big to, like we said before, some of the coaches were stuck in their philosophies or just thought after a certain amount of time, once they get their guys in, then the system's going to work. And a lot of times that ends up not being the case. So that's what I really like about Coach Diaz. And I think, I think Enos at the time looked like a good hire because he came from Bama. But when you really look back at some of his past offenses, I think it was a little smoke and mirrors, with what he did at Bama. But he recognized that after a year that, hey, if I want to keep my job, this is what I have to do. And I have to make a, fundamental change to what we're doing. And he did it. So, I'm certainly willing to give him more time as a fan of the program. And, it was unfortunate with how the season went, but I know there's probably no one more upset about it than Coach Diaz. And, I think that he can succeed here and, I support him.
Yeah. Speaking of Enos, it always works out Nick Saban's way, some way. I don't get it. I don't know. I thought he was going to rejuvenize our offense. What do you think went wrong with our offense? Because there was a lot of hype, man. I mean, he really was our savior.
Yeah, and I went to one of the spring scrimmages, and the O looked good. We were doing some things that we weren't doing before, and I think just we went away from that. For one, we didn't do as many motions or end arounds, jet sweeps, some of the things that they were doing last spring. The offense was slow. It was just very predictable. Not many play calls. Obviously the O-line struggled a lot, and that affected, what they could do overall. But when you have a bad offense, the first thing you want to do is move to a spread because then it's quick reads by the quarterback. You're in shotgun. You're not having to, buy as much time basically. That was an issue. And again, just goes back to not catering to your personnel. Having some younger quarterbacks, especially guys who had maturity issues, they're not the best decision makers. Make it simple on them. So they're just reading in the spread. You're often just reading one side of the field and reading one player and deciding what you're doing with the ball based off of that. And I think it was probably overcomplicated for the QBs, and they ended up holding the ball too long, and our line would just, wasn't good enough to, protect them for that amount of time. So I think he was trying to run. Again, it was, I think, too much pro style, too much power game without the personnel to do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I don't think we had the personnel to run that kind of offense. Mm-hmm. And he came from Alabama saying, well, you're just going to have to adjust. And he didn't have to adjust to the players. Man, as a former wide receiver, how excited do you get with Rhett Lashley coming in?
Yeah, I mean, this is the offense that I always wanted to play in and never got to in my entire career. So I'm really jealous, spreading it out. Again, we have, a good mix at receiver. Wiggins is a tall guy who's a deep threat. Got a couple of good slots with Harley. And, I think Pope can really show what he can do now. I'm sure I'm blanking on guys off the top of my head. But, I think there's some talent in that room. I'm excited to see, if they're for real or not now, that they're going to really get a shot to utilize their skill. And again, using, jet sweeps, using motion. I like to see some triple option with the receiver, going in motion, things like that. Just getting the ball in our playmakers' hands and letting them, do what they do best is run. Basically, that's what the guys down here can do. And, hopefully they finally taking advantage of it. But, again, SMU had one of the best offenses in the country, and now he's got so much more talent at his disposal to use. I think he's really going to, take advantage of it. And so far, I've heard good things, internally within the program, and great feedback on Lashley in his system. So I think the players are buying in and really excited, going forward.
Yeah, and Austin, from this wide receiver group, Mark Pope's a veteran, Mike Harley, D. Wiggins. What player do you think is really going to develop nicely in this new offense?
I'd say Pope, because he's a guy who I think, I don't want to throw him under the bus, but probably hasn't lived up to his billing so far. In high school, he was basically a one route receiver. They throw the screen or send him deep, and he didn't really know how to run routes. And I think that's something he really struggled with. He had the raw athleticism, but couldn't get in and out of breaks. And if you can't do that, you're not going to play. So I would say I think he'll probably make the biggest jump from last year to this year, in my opinion, just because I think his potential is very high. He just, has to unleash that now. Wiggins is another guy I really like, just at his height and having the long speed. You don't see that too often. 6'3", 6'4" guys winning on the deep ball, across the field. So he's another guy. The thing I like about spread, there's usually deep and intermediate and some shallow crosses all built into route concepts. I think Harley and Pope are both guys who will do really well on the shallow cross concept, where you just get the ball in their hands right over the middle, short, and let them run with it. So I think across the board, everyone's going to benefit. SMU also had one of the best receiving tight ends in the country this last year, and I know Brevin Jordan and Will Mallory both are, I think, going to benefit too, because they're both athletic receiving type tight ends, and just getting those guys in space too brings a whole other dimension to the offense.
Yeah, Austin. Speaking of, just players in general, I feel like at times, and I know a lot of fans feel this way, I feel like player development, they have a good freshman year, they keep up to pace sophomore year. This isn't just one specific group. I feel like just in general. Then junior year comes, I feel like they don't take it to the next level every year.
Right.
I'll give an example, the Bermuda Triangle, our linebacker core. Zach McLeod redshirts his senior year. Quarterman declares for the draft, and then Pfenninger goes undrafted. He did have a torn labrum, but they never took it to the next level, I felt like. Why do you think that is for certain position groups at Miami?
Yeah, when I was there, at least, and I'm not going to name any names, but, there were some guys who came in and didn't play much early on, and, the most humbled guys, really good guys to be around. Then suddenly some guys end up, getting on the field, and, by their redshirt freshman or their sophomore years, it looks like, hey, they're going to have a pro career, and everything changes, mentality wise. They start seeing the dollar signs. Some guys get a big head. I'm not saying everybody does. That's, good enough to go pro or leave early, but I've seen it firsthand. I've seen guys kind of coast their money year, basically, or the first year they're draft eligible, because they know they'll get drafted or have a shot to, and don't want to get hurt or anything like that. And, I think a lot of times when you're playing not to get hurt and kind of coasting, that's when you can get hurt, because you're trying so hard to, almost overcompensating to protect yourself, and ends up not, paying off. And then, like we saw with Garvin this year, it was no secret that, his effort was, not good. And, a lot of scouts have come out and said that post-draft, and think he's a day 2 talent that got drafted in the 7th round because he took a ton of plays off. And, that's not picking on the kid. That's his film, and that's what he put on his resume. And, I think a lot of guys, do that. They take plays off. Miami's a distracting place. Once they get older, there's more stuff to do down here, and guys take it a little bit less seriously, especially if, they're not being pushed for a starting spot. If they're comfortable in their position and, know they're the man there. Some guys don't work as hard, and it's unfortunate, but, that's been the case, the last handful of years, really the last 10 years. You've seen a lot of guys go pro that probably shouldn't have, and then some even waited, but again, didn't really develop. And I think part of it's just getting the right coaches in place and the right people to motivate them. But, recruiting guys who are, intrinsically motivated and, able to just push themselves instead of, having to rely on someone else. That's a big thing as well.
Yeah, Austin, where did that kind of mindset come from at Miami? Because I see other programs like Travis Etienne returns for his senior season. I remember Nick Chubb returned for his senior season. I feel like at Miami, people don't declare for the draft and they get undrafted free agent. I don't understand it where it came from. Is there like an origin of that mindset?
I don't think so, and it's hard to really pinpoint it on any one specific issue. The good thing, Miami puts a ton of guys in the NFL. The bad thing, a ton of NFL guys come back all the time, in their fancy cars and expensive watches and, designer clothes in the locker room, and other players see that and they want that and they want it as soon as they can. A lot of guys down here, unfortunately, come from tougher economic backgrounds. And,
right.
I understand, wanting to take care of your family. I wasn't in that position where I had to make a tough choice like that. And, I come from more than most. So it's hard to, put yourself in those shoes if you haven't been there. But yeah, I think a lot of guys are really short-sighted in their thinking with that, opting to risk maybe making a practice squad versus potentially getting guaranteed money if they wait another year, or, taking 7th round money, which is like, 75, 80,000 guaranteed, right, versus maybe coming back and getting $2.5 million guaranteed if you're a 3rd rounder. So just things like that. I think a lot of guys just want to take any quick money versus, longevity or guaranteed money. So those are tough things. The culture down here, there's a lot of good guys, but there's a ton of entitlement as well. And, you see a lot of players who think they're owed something because they were great at a young age. And there's so many handlers down here telling them how great they are from a young age. And, people trying to step in, acting as the father figure, or, just trying to advise them and get in their ear basically to go pro because they want to be, part of their posse or crew, or,
right,
they think that they can maybe cash in. And so I think there's a lot of like negativity in players' ears that probably shouldn't be. And, I really think the coaching staff has their best interest in mind. And
yeah,
obviously they want guys to return and make the team better. But if there's a guy who's, going to be a 1st or 2nd round pick, I think the coaches will say, okay, you should probably take the money, at this point versus coming back for an injury. But if you're a day 3 pick, in my opinion, you have no business going pro. Obviously, there's always different circumstances, but not that many guys get hurt coming back. It happens, but it's a rarity. And I think you're more likely to improve. Now, even if your draft stock is the exact same, you're more likely to live through your first contract if you have another year of strength and conditioning, another year of learning a playbook, getting better on the field, getting more experience. People make the argument that, you can be closer to your 2nd contract. Statistically speaking, no one reaches a 2nd contract. The average career is 3 years. So you have to assume that you're not going to play for a 2nd contract. Do whatever you can to get as much money in that first contract as possible. And then anything else after that's just icing on the cake, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, absolutely awesome. And you said that beautifully. This is a good question that just came up. And what do you think about, spring is being canceled? What do you think about player development right now in the behind strength and conditioning program? Because I know that's huge. And I know you're a former player. You're a part of strength and conditioning programs. And I just want to pick your brain on, imagine that just being taken away from you one spring. And how much is that going to affect just college football players in general?
Yeah, it's definitely tough. And I think different positions will be affected more. Definitely, I think linemen are the ones that are hurt the most. And those are guys who often really need that structure and really rely on their strength more. And, linebackers, positions like that. Think like a corner receiver, guys like that, they're probably okay for the most part and really need to rely on their running and agility. But now's a big time where, it shows who the hardest workers are going to be. Yeah. Obviously, different guys are going to have different access to equipment, and, some are going to have advantages and some disadvantages right now. But there's always something you can do no matter whether you have any equipment or you have all the equipment in the world. So just staying self-motivated, even though you don't have – I know they're doing some Zoom stuff and keeping track of workouts somehow. I don't know exactly how we're doing it, but just taking advantage of all the time that they do have, with, I think, class being over now or just finishing up finals and then having so much free time. There's a lot of time to go out and run and do body weight exercises, things like that. So the guys who aren't disciplined are going to show up and not be in shape and could lose their job, and the guys who, they care more about it are going to show up and, be ready to go. And, something interesting I read recently when the NBA had their last lockout, Achilles tendon ruptures increased by, I don't know, like 100% or 200%, something crazy from the years past. And, that's kind of what I'm worried about for guys is, how, when you're training on your own, how much time are they going to need before the season starts so they're protected, and, are they staying flexible? They're taking care of themselves so, they can hit the ground running as quickly as possible rather than, having those soft tissue injuries when they come back and, things like that.
Yeah, no, Austin, absolutely. I think about that all the time. It's like, hey, how greatly is this going to impact players' careers this upcoming season if they're not physically ready to go? Miami, we rely on a lot of guys. God forbid they get injured. That could really impact our season. That could impact a lot of seasons for college football teams. So definitely, I think health is the priority. And I think they said 6 weeks in advance would have the team ready to go. Do you think that's appropriate time?
Yeah, I think that sounds about right. And that's about the time, around 6 to 8 weeks is kind of how they would cycle our weightlifting. We would do hypertrophy for about a month and a half to 2 months, and you'd focus on a different, muscle system and, methodology. So that sounds about right, is, getting them at least into shape. And I know the staff is thought of pretty highly, at least from what I've heard, the Coach Feely and his guys in there, and, I've heard good things. So, I trust that they'll have the team ready with, whatever amount of time they end up getting.
Hey, Austin, I wanted to pick, I know you're in the industry, and I've always wondered this. When a player is interested in going to the NFL draft, how does the NFL agent begin that relationship with the player, declaring early? And just walk me through that process, because I completely am clueless on how that even transpires.
Yeah, so to be an NFL agent, you have to have some type of post-grad degree. Then you take an exam where only about 40 to 45% of the people pass it a year. And then you have to get registered in every state that you want to recruit in, and pay a fee. So it's highly regulated. A lot of people don't know that actually.
Okay.
So once a player steps foot on or enrolls in college, you're able to recruit them. They used to have a rule called the junior rule, where they had to be, going into their draft eligible year, so redshirt sophomore or true junior, to recruit. They repealed that, I want to say, within the last 5 or so years. Personally, I don't talk to freshmen because, one, it's kind of a waste of time. You don't know if they're going to develop. 2, I don't want to be a distraction to a guy that early. I think they have way more things to worry about at that point, in life and football than picking an agent. If there's a sophomore that's, really shown promise up to that point, then that years would be the earliest that I would reach out to a guy. I'd say most, after their sophomore year going into junior year, if they have a shot to go pro, after their junior year. A lot of it today is through social media, and I think that gives me a huge advantage, just kind of growing up with Twitter and Instagram and being able to find guys' accounts and connecting to them through that way. Being a former player at Miami, obviously it's a lot easier for me to get a guy's cell number than most agents. And then playing at a big high school, we have anywhere from 5 to 10 D1 guys a year. A lot of them at Midwest schools. So, even if a former teammate of mine, isn't good enough to go pro, chances are some of his teammates are in college, and I'm able to get tied in that way. So that's been an advantage of me, at least to approach guys. But yeah, I never try to convince a guy to go pro, because if it doesn't work out, then he's unhappy with me, and I don't want to get fired. There's so much turnover, between players and agents that, it's beneficial to, make sure they're happy and they're making the right choice, so then they keep you long term. And if they get to that second contract, you want them to stay with you versus someone else.
Right.
They have a lot of scouting connects that I'll help get some opinions by, but they also have the draft advisory, and I encourage all of them to talk to the coaching staff. And I'm honest with guys. I generally think if you're not a day 2 pick, you should probably return to school. Unless again there's just circumstances that forcing you to go pro. But I really try to encourage everyone to really take a second look at that. If you're poor for 21 years, you can last another year without money, especially you don't have a single expense when you're in college at the D1 level. Everything's paid for and you're making money on your stipend. These guys are making money. A lot of them are spending it on rental or leasing brand new cars.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which again, it's their money. They're entitled to do it,
Right.
but don't complain that you don't have food money or extra stuff to go out with if you're, not smart with the money that you do have. So, things like that are kind of, would irk me, because you'd see guys pulling up in a brand new car. It's like, dude, why are you,
Right.
your stipend check on that versus, investing it or doing something else with it. So they have no expenses at that point. I am happy with the new likeness things that hopefully some guys can get some more cash in their pockets, and maybe that could incentivize them to hold off for another year of going pro. But yeah, like you mentioned with Etienne at Clemson and some other players, that you don't really see that too often at other schools besides down here. So hopefully things change. I've been transparent with compliance and staff on guys I go after and my thoughts, and I'm going to continue to do so. And hopefully things change, because I want the team to be successful. And I'm not chasing a check. I can wait a year for a guy. It's not a make or break thing for me. So and hopefully more players start to see their past teammates leaving a ton of money on the table by going early and making those decisions to stay and finish out their careers.
Hey, Austin, you explained that beautifully. Thank you very much for doing that, because I truly had no idea what was the process. I didn't know you guys could even get in touch with them at such an early stage in their college career. I thought maybe if they declared, that's when, okay, they have declared, then if they had to contact you guys first. So thank you for that. I had no idea.
And every school has their own little regulations or it's really preferences. There's no legality behind what a school says. It's only the state law that is binding. Now instituted a new policy where they don't want players talking to agents until they declare. No one's going to follow it. I'm being frank. I'm not going to name names or anything like that, but it's no secret on some of the people who kind of follow rules and who don't, or who doesn't in this industry. But I think that's just going to hurt the players more, because some of them aren't going to make the right choice if they are waiting till right at the end, and they're trying to threaten guys' eligibility or suspending them if they talk to agents, and you're putting restraint on their trade and their future earning potential by picking an agent. So I don't know how long that's going to last, and interesting to see what they mean, right? But I think a lot of the things they try to institute is just backwards, in my opinion.
Okay, interesting. Very interesting. Hey, Austin, Manny Diaz, man, going into year 2, as we all know, year 1 was a circus. It was not a successful season. I was very upset. I know a lot of fans are upset.
Yep.
Obviously, Larry Coker won a national title his first year. It didn't end up well. So just because your first year doesn't end up well does not determine the rest of your time at Miami. Right. What can you tell us about Coach Manny Diaz when you spent time with him at the University of Miami that maybe the average fan like myself, like the people watching, do not know about him?
He's really intense, man, and he scared me a little bit. I remember I have a lot of respect for him, and I really like him a lot. And I remember one practice where we'd always start practices. We'd do like walkthroughs before we'd do stretches, and we'd go over, we'd have like some of the scout with the starting D and go over some of the new plays that we were, installing for what our opponents would be running that week. And I was going a little too fast during it, and he comes up and grabs me by the collar and gave me some profanities. And
really,
Yeah, I mean, he's an intense guy, man, and you don't take any of that to heart as a player. And, that's just how he is and how some of the coaches are. And, but no, I have a ton of respect for him. Like I said earlier about always adapting year to year and, identifying where his shortcomings are and what he needs to change. Yeah. So I really like that about him. I think he's not a former player himself, but he wears the cleats on the field. He'll run through the drills. I think he does everything he can to learn the game and has done everything up to that point, at this point, to learn the game. And I think he's a very intelligent person. I think he picks up on things quickly. I think he can connect well to others, no matter what background they're from. So those are all, big positives. But I'd say the one thing that really stands out to me was just the intensity. And but you weren't walking on eggshells around him either, like other coaches. It was, right. You knew when to turn it on, when to turn it off, and when you were off the field, it was, he's your best friend and respects everyone else. But if you're messing up, he'll let you know, and he won't stand for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's one thing about coaches. I feel like they don't know, like players. There's like players, coaches. And there's coaches where players are just like, hey, like I can't look him in the eyes. I can't have a sit down with him if I really want to express myself on something that's bothering me.
Right. Yeah. And we had some like that before where, you don't like them on the field, and then off the field, you're again kind of scared of them, or you get anxiety being around them. And, Diaz, he's not soft on the field like some players, coaches are perceived, but off the field, he'll get to know you. And again, I was on offense, and he talked to me frequently and got to know me and other people like that. So, as long as you did your job and gave full effort, he's going to respect you and, treat you right. So it's kind of a give and take.
So he ripped you apart for just going all out.
It wasn't all out, but I was kind of running a little too much. We were supposed to, jog at the beginning, and I always just kind of had one gear and try to go hard all the time. And, yeah, exactly. So yeah, I learned my lesson right then and there.
By the way, like a lot of people don't know this about you. Like your clips on Green Tree, like you literally broke Malik Young's ankle. There's clips
I broke a lot of guys'
apart. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think if I ended up playing at a different school that used the slot a lot my whole career, I think I could have got serious minutes elsewhere, but I never cared about the NFL at all or playing after college. All I wanted to do was play college football, and Miami was where I always wanted to go. So, I'm content with, how things went. Again, I wish we could have had, Coach Lashley's offense. When I was here, I think I could have had a lot more opportunities, but, wasn't in the cards for, during my time, unfortunately.
No, yeah, absolutely, Austin. Hey, who knows? Everything does happen for a reason, I believe in, and maybe this is Miami's time to shine in the college football world after a long 15 years. Austin, what is your season prediction for the 2020 season?
Ooh, man, that's tough. If we have the season,
right, that too.
Yeah, no, I'm confident we will, and as long as we're healthy, I think we can be an 11-win team. I think, again, it's an easy schedule. Last year was an easy schedule, and we faltered, but I think we had all the talent in place, and with the changes on offense, we should run the table up to Clemson. Being Miami, we'll drop a game that we probably shouldn't. So I would say, 11-1 going into Clemson. I don't know if we have the talent still or depth, quite to match up with them. I think we'll at least give them a game at this point. Unlike the last few times we play them, there was a pretty big disparity, but I think we definitely closed that gap, at least on paper. We got to put it all together, but if Coach Lashley is what he's supposed to be, I think there's no reason why we couldn't, potentially win 11 games this year and then go to a pretty big bowl game afterwards, after the ACC championship.
Yeah, also 11 wins, Austin. Okay, that is 11 wins. That is I said 10 wins last season. I was completely wrong. I'm going to say 9 wins.
I said 10 last also. So I'm not the most accurate, I guess, but I think all the pieces are there, especially at key positions. To really succeed in college football, quarterback and pass rushers are the two main things. And, I think we have elite talent at both of those. And I think the biggest deficiency, O-line, I've heard great things about Garen Justice and, what he's done in a short amount of time. There's a lot of young talent, but a lot of highly rated talent on the line still. So if you can get the most out of them, I think we'll be a completely different team this year.
Hey, Austin, what do you think about De'Ara King? I've heard great things. He looks the best since Brad Kai has been at Green Tree. Have you heard anything good positive feedback from him so far?
Yeah, I just the film I've watched from Houston, he looks incredible. I think he can make every throw, and obviously we haven't had a dynamic quarterback, like him probably ever. But yeah, I've heard so far good things that, he came in as a leader right away. He's a small guy, but again, he's quick and strong and can make the throws. I think he's tailor-made for Lashley's offense, and I think they're going to get the most out of each other. So I'm expecting big things out of him.
Yeah, absolutely, Austin. And we got about 4 minutes left. You want to do some rapid fire real quick if you're up to it?
Yeah.
All right, sounds good. So if you guys have a question, please put it down in the comment section right now, guys, and Austin will answer it for you. Obviously, please be respectful with the questions. Nothing too crazy. Let me see. Let me go through some previous ones. Hey, what do you think about Amon Richards? Kind of before, the accident, did you think he was going to be a first-round NFL star? He had that potential.
Yeah, I love Amon. So I was a senior when he was a true freshman, and I sat right next to him in the receiver room, and you could just see from day one how athletic he was, how mature he was. I think he definitely should have been a first-rounder, had he not been injured.
Absolutely. There was one question. Hey, do you think, Austin, we've gotten momentum-wise, we've gotten a lot of recruits during this time here. Do you think this is the staff really just taking care of the offseason time, the downtime, to get these players? I know did you witness Tennessee get 5 recruits in 3 days?
Yeah. I think I know Manny can sell. Again, like you said, downtime. I think the people who are working the hardest right now are the ones who are going to be the most successful. And just me personally, business wise, I've been doing really well recruiting right now too. So I just similar parallel. I think the ones that really kind of go all out at it while they have that extra time. So I think it's showing, and Manny can recruit, I think. And I guess the new offensive coaches are doing pretty well at it.
It's very good offensive staff. Yeah, no, I'm very content with that offensive staff. Hopefully we can maintain them at Miami. I think that's how you build a successful program, is maintaining consistent coaches.
Yeah, I just had to keep the continuity long term.
Right, just like Dabo Sweeney at Clemson.
Yeah.
Austin, who do you think's the best player on offense and defense in this team?
It's Rousseau on defense, and right now probably Brevin Jordan on offense. But King could be. I don't know if he'll have the draft status just because of the size, but he might be the best player.
Yeah, there was some article I saw, but I don't even believe it. Really, it was 4th best odds to be drafted number 1 overall. I don't see him going near that at all.
Kyler Murray did it, so
right?
It's possible. There's precedent. Right. I don't know exactly how tall King is, but odds are against him. I would say that, just statistically speaking. But
he's hanging around that Tate Martell measurement. They were lined up next to each other, so.
I did to see, yeah.
Hey, Austin, who was the best corner you went up against?
Probably Artie Burns. Just he was so long, and it was fast too. That being a shorter guy gave me fits.
Hey, Austin, I'm gonna work around this question. Manny had a coaching tree with him at Miami. Is that a really close, tight knit unit that he has? Because they've been with him at Mississippi State. He even promoted them. It's kind of like a minor league farm system, I feel like.
Yeah, they're definitely all close together, and I really like those coaches a lot. I think they're some of the hardest working guys I've ever been around. Coach Packey gets a lot of heat, unfortunately, but I think the striker position's been the most consistent on the team the last 2 years. He's a really hard worker. Coach Banda, Coach Rump, I think is the best developer of talent on the staff. I think Coach Banda is a great recruiter and gets a lot out of his players. Defense hasn't been the problem since they've been there. Obviously, there's been a game or two here and there where they didn't do as well, but that's, has been the least of our worries.
Hey, Austin, Mac Brown, I think he's very ahead of schedule at North Carolina.
Yeah,
7-6. Are they a major threat this season right now with Sam Howell under center, Philip Longo, the XOC under Hugh Freeze at Ole Miss, and moving forward?
Yeah, and it's kind of weird because Mac Brown recruited tremendously, even at Texas when they weren't doing well, but then he stopped developing talent. But at that key position of quarterback, they got one of the best in the country. So I do think that, if they keep recruiting like they had been, I think they're going to be really tough to compete against every year. And they kind of had their way with us last year. And again, we all thought we were definitely going to win easily, and wasn't the case. So I think they may take over for Virginia Tech as, the team to beat in the Coastal that we're having to compete against every year.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And they just got a big donation to the program as well, worth $25 million. So let's see what they do with that. Have you heard anything about Jalen Phillips? Coach Baker said he is like creating your own video game player. He's that good.
Yeah, I've heard kind of similar things, and that just his work ethic in the weight room, because he couldn't practice the past year. So it's just, getting big in the gym, but put on a ton of weight, still has his speed and athleticism. Russo's a clear-cut one, and Roche, is that how you say his last name?
Roche.
Yeah. He's one of the best in the country too. So Phillips would be the starter on probably 99% of college football teams. Unfortunately, he's got, 2 early round guys ahead of him. I still think he'll, come in and make a lot of plays though. As a sub, and maybe move Rousseau in on the inside on some third down packages. I'm expecting big things out of him too. And again, I hope he stays, as a fan and as a year of being the man. But he's a guy who potentially could go early just based off of his potential he has as well. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I've never seen a defensive end unit that talented and deep in a long time at Miami. How effective do you think the Ed Reed hire will be? I'm curious about this one because I don't think he's in Miami right now. I think he's kind of, in a sense, working out of state remotely, if you want to say.
Yeah, I think he's back and forth. I actually saw him at a cigar bar in Brickell.
Okay, cool.
It was probably 2 months ago, but shortly after the hire, whenever that was. But I think it's huge. One of the best football players of all time. He's just an icon. I think he'll help with recruiting, maybe landing some guys. If you have Ed Reed on the phone, you're going to listen and take what he says to heart. And just he's been around so much football. I think just philosophically, he's going to help make some changes or suggestions. I think he's going to get players to buy into the culture and what needs to be done to be successful. So I think that's one of the, again, I think Lashley is the biggest change from last year, but I think Reed potentially could be the second biggest going forward.
Hey, Austin, I got a question. It has nothing to do with Miami Hurricanes football. Is Formula One racing really big in the state of Indiana? Like, people really like it, or is that just something different?
IndyCar is super big. So F1 is more like European.
Yeah. So is Indy 500 IndyCar or?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah. So it's different, similar. The cars look kind of the same. But yeah, it's pretty huge there. And I'm not a big racing fan, but I go to the 500 a lot. Just it's kind of a rite of passage thing, I guess. And it's a big party. It's the biggest sporting event in the world. 300,000 people. So it's a good time, even if you don't like racing.
Yeah, I've actually been there when they were testing. I guess making. I was there.
Qualifications.
Family member of mine was graduating from Purdue, so we.
Great engineering and.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So gave that a shot. You a Pacers fan as well, or?
Yeah. Big Pacer fan, big Oladipo fan.
That 30 for 30 with Spike Lee and Reggie Miller was epic.
That was something else. Yeah, I remember watching Reggie as a kid, so he was fun to watch, and best team to never win a finals.
Hey, Austin, man, it was a pleasure to have you on, man. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to come on. And hey, man, best of luck with the NFL agency. I think you're going to do great things, man. So thank you so much, man.
Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate you having me on. Love to talk Canes. So again, thank you, and looking forward to this season.
All right, Austin. All right. Have a great day, guys. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Many blessings and stay safe out there. All right. Ending, bro.